Good morning, you guys. So within this video, it's going to be directed towards the African American community. This is not a video to divide us. This is a video to help bring clarity to those that are not of African American descent, Black culture. Also for those that are African Americans to try really think about all the things that your culture, your community is going through at this moment, and for us to understand that with everything going on, why are we still so quick to help bring each other down? Okay, let's get into it. So, to my knowledge, to my experience, to what I've been seeing, a lot of people within the African American culture have been the target of being the public enemy number one. When I say that, I mean we are the face of so many negative aspects that you lose count. If you want to start with gang violence, most people are being taught that African Americans are gang members. We're not the only culture that's gang members. On top of that, if you want to talk about low poverty, African Americans are the top face of poverty when we know we're not the only ones that's in poverty. Welfare, blacks has been faced as being the ones that's on welfare when we know there's more cultures on welfare than African Americans. Prison, Black Americans has also been the target of the high rate of the prison incarceration. Okay, drug dealers, African Americans has been listed as being known as drug dealers. List goes on and on. Theft, excuse me, African Americans has been targeted to be the person that's high on theft. Murder rate, African American communities has been targeted to be the face of being known as having a high murder rate. Even if these are not facts that are proven to be true, we are still put into the system of society to be the face of all these negative things, which in my instance to bring up the targeting as targeting individuals. We are easier to be target because people will believe, sorry, my phone rang. People will believe that what is being said is true because they already been guided to believe that we are a part of the negative aspects, right? And so why it hurts me so bad is because when you do get African Americans that have strived to deface that negative stigma that has been placed upon them, and you become targeted, and it's so many African Americans like within my targeting that's quick to believe and help slander or help bring another person down. It's hard for me to fathom. It doesn't matter if it's a different culture, but because they know, when I say they, I'm saying African American people, I'm African American as well, because we know, I'm gonna say we, that a lot of times information is falsified. How can you be quick to help target another person when you know within yourself you've seen it, lived it, that a lot of false information has been given against people just to bring them down, to keep them in bondage? You have a lot of innocent programs that's going on where it ties to the fact that a lot of African Americans people, just not African American people, but a lot of them are being incarcerated off of false allegations. But you still have these African Americans out here that are willing to target other African Americans or people in general. So I'm speaking to those today that may be trying to seek information and they really want to get clarity. This is how it begins. In my opinion, I feel that we are so quick to go against each other because it was a learned behavior that took place among our slavery ancestors, okay? And you probably like, what? Okay, let's break this down. A lot of people don't know that some of us put our own self in bondage, especially in Africa. It's called the African trade slave, okay? Research to get more information. However, the Africans was trade in their own slaves to the Europeans because they felt like some of their own people were criminals, okay? So they would put them in jail, and they saying, well, you're not one of us anyways because you went against us, because maybe these people stole from the royalty, the Africans that were in royal, right? Um, and so they traded them in for gold, silver. They traded them for weapons such as, we didn't have guns back then. How you think they got it in Africa? The Europeans said, I want your man because we need him to help us build land. Okay, and they traded him in. So when they traded him in, the trade just began to continue. So therefore, it's like we also helped put some of our own culture into bondage, okay, within the African slave trade. Like I said, do your research. We're going to go into that. So some of the stories where you hear everybody put it on, the Europeans came and took us into bondage. That's partial true, but partially we also gave our own people to the Europeans because of greed or because we wanted more, okay? This is not to put us down. This is to find out, what is this theme from, okay? So now that we're in bondage or we're considered slaves, we are turned against each other because you have the people that's the field slaves, then you have the people that's the house slaves, okay? So now we're looking at each other because we don't have no other outlook to say, who am I better than? We already know at this time our self-esteem is broken, so we feel like we can't say, I'm better than this other culture or I'm equal to. So in order to bring up your self-esteem as an African American in this time, you felt, I can feel better than a person that works in the field, okay? Get where I'm going with this. The people in the field felt less than. They hated the ones that were in the house because they said, why do they get to get in the house just because their skin is lighter than mine? So this stemmed all the way from back then, you guys, and it's brought up to current time, meaning we never broke the chain of disliking each other within our own culture because we never let go of the past or healed the past. So we still live that lifestyle of, I'm better than some African Americans. That's why they go against each other, right? Okay. And then we still live off of that theory because the ones that are of darker descent, it is still sometimes harder to get employment. So what they do to boost their self-esteem, this is my opinion, is buy lavish things, right? So like a lot of people say African Americans waste money on jewelry. They waste money on these big cars and fancy cars. They don't have the money because it's the self-esteem issue. It makes you feel like, I have all these things. Look what I have. I came up. I'm not a slave, field slave. I'm a house slave. Unfortunately, I'm using those words house because I still feel that we are captured in bondage because we are not free to do everything as everybody else, as to be equal. So the point of this conversation is, this is something that the African American community have to really sit down and get the facts and talk amongst each other about the rooted issue that has led us to hate each other today, because it's not going to end with us fighting other cultures. It ends when we help heal ourselves. Because this topic is important to me, because if you look around, they're trying to pinpoint us against each other, meaning race against race. But you got to be smarter than that and understand that a lot of the problems stem from our own culture. Okay? We can control gun violence if we actually look at each other as brother and sisters, right? Saying, I've been through a lot, so I promise you, I really think you've been through a lot as well as an African American. So overall, the number one message that I'm trying to bring out is to please those of you that are from a different race, to try to understand that what you are hearing in the news or media is a lot of falsified information. And for those that are African Americans, try to bring yourself together to not have hate on any culture because you've been through a lot so much yourself, because that's what they're trying to do, divide us.